This is an open letter for Mr. Bernie Sanders and Miss Ocasio-Cortez. Hello, folks. Bravo, bravo. Great job. Great tour. Here's the thing, folks. I think if one should ask that if this is not the right time to come up with a third party, when would be the right time to start a new party, a third party? And if you ask that question, the answer is definitely this would, if there is ever any time to come up with a third party, this is the time. This would be the time, historically looking at it. And this is what I'm advising. Advice, no. I'm recommending, no. I'm suggesting, nobody in the middle of nowhere is suggesting that this should be this. Logically, one can argue historically that this is the ripe time for creation of a third party, another party, if there ever is a right time. This would be it. Why? And just go right off the bat. I think you and the squad could be the nucleus of that new party, and Mr. Bernie Sanders as the guide, the Jedi, the Jedi to your squad. Salute. As long as as long as Mr. Bernie Sanders comes on board with regards to Israel and agrees that Israel should become a secular society in which the Arabs are the majority, and if the Jews want to stay there, they can stay there. If they don't want it, they can go back, but it has to be, because it's on Arabian Peninsula, so it has to be an Arab country. You can't just have a Polish country on Arabian Peninsula. And Mr. Bernie Sanders understands that. He's not very crazy about Israel. He's worried about the Jewish lives, which is the correct worry, but he's not very worried about Israel, because he understands it's a fruitless task. Anyway, at least for the people involved, it's a fruitless task. Maybe other people who are not involved benefit from it, but for the people involved, the adventure of Israel was a fruitless task. Anyway, is a fruitless task. Maybe somebody somewhere is making a lot of money. Anyway, my point is this. Why is this the right time to create a third party? Because the Democratic Party, I saw two videos today, two clips, and thank God for Elon Musk. I saw two clips and TikTok. I saw two clips in which, and before you guys who are listening to this think that, oh, let's go shut down Elon Musk and TikTok and our problems will be over. No, this is just the beginning. You can't control the internet. There are a couple of hundred Nigerians and Angolan software companies that would love to take the place of TikTok and Twitter. So you just can't control it. Anyway, my point is this, that from the available information, it is clear that the Democratic Party is not in step with the majority domestically, and as you can see from the number of vetoes in the United Nations, Democratic Party has decided they don't want to be in step with the majority of the world either. What I mean by that is that domestically, the democratic brand has become tainted, both domestically and internationally. How is it that domestically? Because Democratic Party has decided to follow the interest, or ridiculously emphasize the interest of 0.0001% of society who make up the the bulk of the transgender of the society, that's the interest of 0.0001%. And they have emphasized that so much that, you know, they raise flags for it. It's sort of like you don't raise flag. But here's the problem. 80% of your population works for a living, is a labor. 80% of your, 90% of your population, or 80% of your population is labor, both blue collar and white collar. You don't raise a flag for 80-90% of your population, which you presumably somebody has to represent. Republicans don't represent labor, for fuck's sakes. If the Democrats, labor makes up 80% of your society, 90% of your society who works for a living. And Republicans are fine with nobody raising the flag of the labor. In fact, from time to time, they take advantage of the fact that nobody is looking after the labor vote, those who work for a living. Democratic Party, all about, you know, a very small fraction of society who have, you know, transgender ideals or wants or needs, but, you know, forget about the labor, forget about their wages, forget about the existence of labor, and forget about universal basic income. To be frank, Democratic Party should have come up with universal basic income 20 years ago, 30 years ago. As soon as the jobs started vanishing, a reasonable system comes to understanding that, oh, jobs are vanishing, they're going somewhere, they're doing it somebody cheaper. Okay, we understand, and our currency is the world reserve currency, so there's not going to be ever any shortage, any shortage of need for our currency, so we're going to print this currency and slowly hand it out to people as universal basic income, those who cannot find work that matches their talent. So, but they didn't do that. The Democratic Party has forgotten that people work for a living. So, you know, President Trump basically took the ball and ran with it. All he had to do is, you know, steer some fries, and there goes, the vote is locked in. Because nobody's looking at the labor's interest. Those who work for a living make up 80-90% of society. So basically, Democratic Party has left the needs domestically, is not representing the majority. Republicans, again, they flirt with the labor. Maybe not. You know, even the boss has to get along with the labor. So, you know, but it's not in real means. The boss that looks after labor doesn't really care about the labor. It just needs the labor. So it needs to have good relations with the labor. So, you know, is ready to, you know, consent more or less to anything as long as it doesn't cost him more. That's Mr. Trump. Salute. And no, the welfare of the labor is not important for the boss. You know, healthcare and welfare and this and that. But then it wasn't important for the Democratic Party either, because their brand no longer represents labor. It represents something to do with sexuality on your planet. So, and internationally, I saw, as I said, I saw two clips. One was actually not a clip, but the voice of Mr. John Bolton going on MSNBC and banging the drums of bombing. We need to bomb. We need to bomb. And who was he saying? Was he on his soapbox? MSNBC. MSNBC actually provides cameras and microphones so everybody can hear what John Bolton has to say. And I'm thinking to myself, why does everybody need to hear what John Bolton has to say? And up to yesterday was the Fox who couldn't push who had to have John Bolton on every show. Now it's MSNBC that takes on John Bolton in every show. Why we all need to know what John Bolton has to say? And MSNBC is supposedly of the Democratic brand, or the Democratic brand is of MSNBC brand. I don't know. But what is clear is that internationally, and nobody in the world agrees with this bombing. Only John Bolton and his pals, buddies, if he has any, agree with more bombing. The rest of the world says no. So, in fact, internationally also, the Democratic brand has become a brand in which the Democratic Party rejected the ideas of 8.5 billion population of Earth and went with the idea of 5 million population of Israel. That's all those vetoes that Uncle Sam's managers used. Was basically Uncle Sam going with the very small minority of 5 million, with taking their side, instead of taking the side of 8.5 billion who have stated their idea in United Nations that Israel should be somehow punished, held up to justice because they're killing the natives over there and this is not kosher. United Nations, the representative of 8.5 billion people, says stop this nonsense, and the Democratic Party, who was in charge up to like 3 months ago, the Democratic Party had decided to no, we don't want to listen to the demands of 8.5 billion people. We want to listen to the demands of 5 million people. That's internationally. Domestically, again, the Democratic Party has decided to say we don't care about the 80% who earn their income through some kind of labor. We don't care about their needs, but we do care about, again, a very small minority that have some sexual ideas. This is where the Democratic Party has reached. So the question is that's where you come to the question that if this is not the time to start a third party, a successful third party, I believe can start. And that is because you will get a lot of small donations, and I understand this whole process that you got on this planet called supposedly your form of democracy costs a lot of money to get involved. Yeah, I think, as Bernie Sanders showed, he can get a lot of small donations. He doesn't have the energy, but the squad has the energy to go around and show themselves and shake hands and do whatever. They will do that. Small donations will fill your budget, and I have a feeling all the blue collars and white collar workers that you need to run the campaign of creation of a new party, I think they will either work for free or half price because they're out of a job, many of them, both white collar and blue collar. So this would be the time that you can start a party and call it. Don't call it anything weird that white people find offensive. like like humanity, fraternity. Don't use any of those offensive words. Call it the Freedom Party. Freedom from influence of money. Freedom from influence of capital. And call it the Freedom Party. And if Glenn Beck asks you why you're calling it Freedom Party, you're stolen our slogan, this freedom, 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 freedom. If they tell you that you have stolen our slogan, you say, no, this is called Freedom Party because this is a party free from influence of capital, period. That's why we call it Freedom Party. My point is this, that you have to, this is the time to start a third party if you have to, and historically speaking. And you have the squad, and they're all more the squad in all of the House of Representatives. The squad is the only part of the House of Representatives, and somewhat Mrs. Green and and a few other Mr. Massey and Mr. Rand Paul. These people are the ones who are in step, both domestically and internationally. They're in step with the majority, And this offense that these people take with United Nations, that United Nations cannot tell us what to do. I'm sorry, don't look at it, cannot tell us what to do. Do you want to be in step with the majority, or you want to, march into the beat of your own drum? Israel is white people marching to the beat of their own drums. The whole rest of the world said this is a bad idea, just like South Africa, like Vietnam, like Iraq. These are all things that the rest of the world says no. 8.5 billion humans on earth say no. A couple of 100 million have been were convinced that yes, no, let's go. Not, they were convinced. A few people had to die and towers had to come down until you can convince people to go into debt in order to attack a whole country. It's sort of like something that could have been taken care of by some kind of international court and police action suddenly became an international war. United Nations was not up for Iraq war, but and many people who were up for it, and now they understand their mistakes. But then you do agree that United Nations was correct. The idea of the majority was correct, that leave Vietnam alone, leave Iraq alone, leave Afghanistan alone. If you have some problem with some people, file some claim in International Criminal Court, and we will bring in to justice Bin Laden, just like supposedly we brought to justice the people in Yugoslavia. But you attack Yugoslavia to bring people to justice that international community didn't agree that they needed justice, and then you attack Afghanistan because you think that there are 12 people you want to bring to justice. So we were going to take over a whole fucking country because we need 12 people. So my point is this. Sorry. The point is this, that this is the time and to come up with a third party, and I think once you started it, you will go and become successful, because Democrats are standing with 0.0001% domestic supporter of population who are domestically support transgender ideas, and that's about it. Domestically, and also they are in favor of billionaires and millionaires and whatever. So the rich people are good, transgenders are good, labor, nobody's talking about labor. And internationally, as we saw, these guys are willing to go against 8.5 billion population of Earth. So they don't have any international. Here is how you know the Democratic Party have gone so, I believe the word is awry, that the fucking British imperialist pigs saw so much of themselves in the Democratic Party that they send a platoon of hitman or propagandists, whatever you want to call them, to North America in order to help the Democratic Party, because they identify with the brand. An imperialist pig identifies with the brand of the Democratic Party. The country that still stands for imperialism and selfishness and piggishness and hooliganism, that would be the British. They are willing to go to war with anybody, anywhere, anytime. And they will be the offending, they don't mind being drawing first either. In fact, they insist on drawing first. So The British imperialists have seen themselves in the Democratic Party. Is this the Democratic Party that you belong to, Mrs. Ocasio-Cortez, of underclass? You identify with an imperialist, with a party that so embodies imperialism that the old imperialist pigs identify with it. That would be the British and the French, but mostly the British. That cannot be the same brand as you. And as I said, I've seen two videos. One was the video of Mr. John Bolton on MSNBC advocating for more bombing of the planet for somebody's benefit. And I saw the video of Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, another town hall, and somebody screaming about Palestine and disturbing her town hall, because your brand is tarnished. You are part of the Democratic brand. You still cannot come out and say that we don't stand for this bullshit, because you have to, kiss the ring of the Democratic whip. So you cannot say on every town hall that, you cannot give a 15 or 10 minutes at every town hall to the cause of that international cause, that 8.5 billion population of Earth have decided that it's a bad idea. But you cannot come in your town hall, Mrs. Ocasio-Cortez. You cannot come in your town hall and state that, because that would be not be the party line, and you piss off the party. So you can't say that. You can't say that really, and that cannot be following the being in step with the international community. Cannot be one of your pitches in your election campaign, because the Democratic Party does not approve, because they are not in step with international community. It's like, Israel and United States stand together, and apparently that's somehow supposed to be a good idea. If you're alone and nobody else wants to follow you, that means you're going the right way. Absolutely. My point is this. This is the time to start a party. Call it the Freedom Party, freedom from influence of capital, because we both know that both domestically and internationally, the reason the Democratic Party's policies are pointed in such direction is because their main concern is both domestic money and international money. They want more domestic money and more international money. It's more money. That's the same, the same routine that Mr. Trump has. So as far as Democratic Party is concerned, there is absolutely no difference domestically or internationally between Democratic Party and the Republican Party. That's why Trump's brand shined, because he's not really following the Republican manual script either. But again, he's not really for labor, because he's not of the labor. He looks labor, he acts labor, but he's not of the labor. I believe, they call, if you have the money but you don't act the money, that means you recently become rich. They call nouveau riche. If you have become, the money has been in the family for a few generations, you're considered as new money, and a lot of times you don't act or behave as if you have the money, because you recently have become. It's like Beverly Hillbillies or something, like some show the other. The point is this, that this is the time, and because then you will have a lot of money and a lot of free labor coming your way in order to support a party that actually represents The majority, the majority ideas, both domestically and internationally. Domestically, majority ideas. Here's what the majority idea is. The majority of the labor, the majority of population, which are labor, they work for a living. The majority of population are not really comfortable with too much talk of sexuality and too much talk of, changing sexes and changing rules and ideas overnight. We can be anything you want. You can be a wallflower, you can be a dog, you can be a cat. The majority are not comfortable with it. Maybe at some point in the future they may be, but they are not. So you don't care about that part of it, and you say to the transgender and whoever else, the very small minorities that nowadays the Democratic Party represent, you tell them that, hey, I'm sorry for your trouble, you're transgender, I understand it's difficult, but the majority of my people, the people who support my party, that would be the Freedom Party, the majority are okay with you being transgender, but they just don't want to be the matter be so in a vulgar manner advertised in their classrooms, the classrooms that their children go, because the parents have got used to their boy being a boy and they've got used to their girl being a girl. Yeah, sometimes there is some mix up and they have to change sexes, but doesn't have to be on news 24/7. It doesn't have to be the main pillar of the Democratic Party. It seems this sexual business had become the main pillar of the Democratic Party. What percentage of your population have a problem with this sexual business? Haven't figured out what they want, who they are, and what they are. What percentage of population usually is this way? 0.001% of population. They go through life. They don't figure out what gender even they are. Poor bastards. I'm very sorry for them, but that's a matter that concerns 0.001% of the society cannot be the main pillar of one of the two parties of any system. Democrat, you call it democracy, democratic system. Okay, you have two parties, and one of the parties, their main pillar is something that concerns only 0.0001% of the population, not the labor, not the living standards of the labor, not the needs of the labor, 80% of the population who make up the labor, who work for a living. Their concerns are not our concerns, but the transgenders' concerns that's our main pillar, both domestically and internationally. That's exactly how Democratic Party are treating international matters. At home, we are for the transsexuals, which make up 0.00, and every day we have to talk about these people and their issues and their problems, and they only make up 0.001% of our population. Internationally, we also have to keep emphasizing the issues that Israel is having and its help to protect Israel, who makes up 0.0001% of the population of Earth. Israel holds just as much percentage-wise, is just as an insignificant percentage of the humans on Earth as the number of transgenders in North America compared to the whole population of North America. So you see how Democratic Party has gone so wrong that both domestically and internationally, Democratic Party can be identified with their brand as being in lockstep with the smallest minority possible and ignoring the majority totally. This is the time to have a new party and say, oh yes, we have a new party, it's called Freedom Party. Internationally, we vote in favor of whatever the majority of the nations vote for. this is the time the party to come and say internationally, this is our policy. We don't veto, we go with the majority of United Nations. Whatever United Nations majority decides, we go with that. We don't veto anything. We know we have the power of veto, but we also know we have to be modest and wise and not veto anything, because if we believe in democracy and the right of majority, then in United Nations we go with the majority, especially if the majority is like 9-1, is 6-1, 5-1. And domestically, I'm sorry, no, we don't care. We hope transgender are doing okay as well, but we represent the interest of the 80% who work for a living. Whatever their interest is, if their income is not enough, we provide them with universal basic income. If they're not getting healthy, we see what we have to do to get them healthy, because they're part of our tribe and therefore part of our responsibility. And this is a freedom party. It's free from influence of capital, so we actually put people first, interest of people first, and interest of capital second. This is the freedom party. I think in this party is going to take every 80% population who vote Labor, who are Labor, who work for living, will vote for your party. Salute.